all hope to be financially stable one day, but if you're really struggling to make ends meet, that can feel like a real stretch. It can feel really hopeless for people at times. We're going to talk about this word, hope, with a psychologist and author named Robyne Hanley-Dafoe. She is award winning. She's written a bunch of books. The one in particular we're going to focus on is called I Hope So: How to Choose Hope Even When It's Hard. She joins us now to talk about it. Hello there, Robyne.
Hello, I'm so excited to be here with you today.
I inhaled the book and I have a conflicted relationship to the word hope. On
Fair?
the one hand, it is so consistent with my deeply held optimism and my optimistic temperament. And
Mhm.
on the other hand, hope and $7 may buy you a latte at Starbucks. So, what does hope mean to you?
Well, first, I love that you already kind of queued up this thinking because the language that we use when we talk about hope is absolutely critical. And I think where lots of folks experience some tension around thinking about hope is because it's often exchanged with that belief of optimism. And what we know about optimism, it means it's attached to an outcome. I'm optimistic that if I save, it's going to lead to these type of returns. I'm optimistic if I got the right job, then I would be able to meet my needs. It's attached to an outcome. When we think about hope, Bruce, it very much can be thought about as trust. I trust that come what may, I'll be able to figure it out. So we're not attached to the outcome. We are attached to that deep belief that we know we can figure this out, and we are leaning into good ideas, good knowledge, and we're trusting ourselves in the process.
What is the source of hope? Because I think if you could sell it at Costco, it would exceed the volume of roast chickens by a country
Love it.
mile, I think, if you could sell hope.
Yeah. So I think when we think about that variable, people find it in different places and spaces. And that's one of the things that we saw very much in the research early on. For some people, it's very much a spiritual practice where they're able to surrender, they're able to lean into things outside of their understanding, so to speak, to be able to cultivate this renewable resource of hope. For other people, they find it in connection, they find it in community, they find it in our shared humanity. So what's so beautiful, for some persons, they might find it in nature. For others, they might find it in prayer. But ultimately, we know that hope is a renewable resource. We are able to see it, we're able to choose it, we're able to cultivate it when we know where to go looking for it.
As ephemeral as it may be, there is actually, as you write, a science behind it. There is the
There
science
is.
of hope, which I feel like now I've heard it all. Tell us more about the science of it.
Yeah, and what was interesting when we dived into this research, I was curious as to when did people actually start talking about this from a psychological perspective, a physiological perspective, even a spiritual perspective. And one of the beautiful things that this goes deep and it goes very, very far back. People have been talking about this for centuries. And what was so beautiful is that there's not many threads in the human experience that are studied as deeply as hope is, although often it's, again, interchanged in different ways and practices. When we dive into what we talk about in modern day science, what we see on a physiological level, it actually changes how we use our internal resources. The aperture in which we actually even see the world is much broader. Our ability to be able to show up, again, even in hard seasons, these areas that can be nurtured and cultivated, we know it makes a difference on recovery, on healing, on going deeper in a more meaningful way in our work and even in our relationships, Bruce.
And of course, this is a show about money. And
Yeah.
a lot of people feel pretty hopeless about money right now. How would you reapply the insight in your book specifically to this area of life?
So I think when we think about money, and first of all, I always like to just remind myself even and other people that are listening is that money is like a man-made system. It is a system that we have built an entire ecosystem around, but ultimately is this idea of exchange. And when people are feeling in that place of hopelessness, or they're feeling in a place where all their sense of security and safety that's tied up with finances is in the hand of a boss, in a leader, in an organization, in a market, we're very much surrendering our sense of control.
Hmm.
And so, our invitation, when people are feeling really kind of wobbly and uncertain, thinking about it in other other forms of currency. And what I mean by that, there's a very popular belief right now at Bruce, you might have heard it, where people are saying, like, nobody's coming to rescue you. You have to figure out everything by yourself.
Mm.
Well, I think that's so misunderstood because you're darn right people are going to rescue me because I've built relationships where
Yes.
people are going to look after me. I know that, for example, if I have a tricky bill that I'm not really sure, I can call my financial planner and get insight, or I don't have to try and figure this out all by myself. And especially in an area like financial literacy, areas around financial understanding and knowledge, trusting the people, having that inner circle of folks that you can ask for help.
Mm.
Even, for example, if you realize, okay, I might feel a little bit that scarcity around those resources of finances, but there's other ways that people can help and create this currency where those people are going to want to help you as well. So just being open to the idea, it's actually ultimately about relationships, and money is about exchange.
It's a very interesting reframe because in the world of philanthropy, we talk about time, talent, and treasure. And a lot of
Yes.
people have treasure, they'll cut a big check, but a lot
Yeah,
of people are just showing up at the soup kitchen and greeting people and serving those
that's
people.
right.
You write that financially, hope enhances positive financial behaviors and long term planning. I agree with that conceptually. Is there data on this?
Yes, absolutely. The data is amazing. And I love to share this with all my financial folks because what we see is that when people have just even small wins in the landscape around their finances, we see that it actually increases the likelihood of that behavior happening again. So, what we see is that when people just get these little wins where they're able, even for example, to automate the savings, so they don't even have to see it, it just kind of happens. And then all of a sudden they get that reminder to be like, hey, this money is working for you. This isn't just dead money sitting in a corner so you can sleep well at night.
Mm.
Because so often we have pockets of money that we do refer to as just dead money. Jay Papasan taught me that idea. But
Mm.
again, once we see that it's working for us, it will reinforce the likelihood we're more likely to do it. And the other gentle invitation I let folks know is it's completely normal to oscillate on any given day with, I want to save for the future and I trust that I can build that security and that safety versus we only live once. And at any given day, we can oscillate between those two. And that's part of a lived experience. That's part of just understanding our resources. So when we can set up behaviors and habits that allow us to get these small wins, we
Mm.
actually see this increase, Bruce, over the long run.
You have wonderful stories throughout the book. One of the particular individuals that you write about is Dr. James Rouse, if I'm pronouncing that
That's
correctly,
right.
and the idea of a beautiful death. I lost my mom almost exactly a year ago, and it was beautiful. It was perfect. Everything about it was like the best ever. Tell us
Wow.
a bit more about what he illuminated about the possibility for hope to persist even in endings.
Yes, and that was again, I just hold space for the loss of your mom and also how you have processed it,
Yeah.
that it was something to be shared in a beautiful way. So
Yeah.
Bruce, I love that you've illustrated that already. Thank you for sharing that. And just one little piece before I answer your question about Dr. James is I would love to hear your mom's name. Can I ask?
Helene,
Helene.
Helene Sellery,
Oh, I
amazing
think
in
it's
every way.
I think
Yeah,
it's
she's
very
sitting right
special.
here. She's
Yes.
sitting right here. She's like, "Why are you talking about me on your show again? Don't talk about me." It's like, oh,
There you
thanks.
go.
People like you.
Yes. Well, I think it's very important we say the names of our loved ones
Yeah.
whenever we have a chance, not just the passing, but also that they lived.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. So what we know about what Dr. James Rouse taught us about this idea of beautiful death, and this is someone who is a functional medicine doctor. It's somebody who is an end of life specialist. He said that when we show up with our affairs in essentially the best order that we can do, it's an act of love for our loved ones that live beyond us. And he talks about that when we can get right with those matters, and financial are such to me, I think that's one of the biggest areas that we can do that investment in our future for our loved ones. And I can give you the example. I know when my father shared with me that when he lost his mother and father, when they went to the funeral home to manage all of those pieces, Bruce, they got there and there was a folder and absolutely every single detail was already selected.
Beautiful.
Absolutely everything about the funeral was planned. It was paid for. The choice of music, the invitations for pallbearers, like every single component. And it was actually this last parting gift that my grandparents gave my father because he was able to get his orders in his affairs in order.
Great. There are some people who relate to hope as a feeling,
Yeah.
and fleeting as it may be. You're not talking about that. You talk about hope as a strategy. As
Mhm.
someone who focuses on personal finance, I believe deeply in the value of context, the setting in which an event occurs. And for someone who experiences hope, who is present to hope, that is like the first thing. But then what follows is action. They have to do all the things. How do you ensure that people have this like light bulb of, oh my God, there is hope. I am present to hope, and I got to file my taxes. And there's no fun in that. There's no fun for
Yeah.
anybody in any of that.
Yes. I get that. I totally get that. And on the flip side, I think it's really remarkable if we think about using just how we use reframe. So the reality is if you have a whopper of a tax bill, that means you did a whopper of a job doing your work this year.
Yeah.
I want a higher tax bill because that means I'm doing more work, I'm generating more
Right.
revenue. So again, the higher the tax bill, the higher, and yeah, for sure, it'd be nice to keep more of it, of course. However, if you just think about the fact that the more that we are able to achieve, we can contribute, we're able to build, like these are pretty amazing problems to have to spend our energy focused on. So when we think about these practices, we think about, okay, well, how do we action it? Like, yes, we still have to pay the taxes, we still have to do the work. What does that look like? What we want to do in cases is like really essentially find moments where we actually like slow down
Mm.
and take notice. Like so many people, I think they're so uncomfortable or they feel under-resourced or under-skilled to navigate financial things. So they just don't even bother to look at it. It's a wee bit of that ignore and override, and you just wait until hopefully it kind of works itself out. But when we can start building that agency or what we call efficacy around understanding, and this isn't this idea that you have to go figure it out by yourself. Talk to the people, like talk to the trusted people like
Mm.
yourself, like people who are, this is your area of expertise. And the reality is, I believe, especially around finances, people genuinely want to help.
Mm.
People genuinely want people to say, like, hey, this isn't scary. Like, look at your book, right? Your approach to this is there's like almost a comical nature, even in just the
I
title
hope
of your book,
so.
right? Because you're just like, guys, it's not that deep,
Yeah.
right? To quote my 22-year-old son who loves to
Yeah.
remind me all the time, Mom, it's not that deep.
Right.
Like, you're right, being able to go to those trusted people, all of those are practices that are going to allow us to be in reality, but also approach it in the most hope-filled way.
There are lots of conversations and tale as old as time about the difference between nature and nurture in every aspect of human
Yes.
behavior. There is Eeyore and there is Winnie the Pooh. So
Mhm.
as you think about maybe that narrative, how do you think people should think about what they can develop for themselves and how they are about hope that is a function of what they were, let's quote Lady Gaga. They were born this way.
Born this way.
Born
Yes.
this way.
Yeah. Well, as a behaviorist, the question I love to explore, and we went into this in a lot more detail in the Stressing Wisely area in the book, the other book about finances. But I think a starting place is to just explore the money story. Like what was your experience like growing up? Was money something that we didn't talk about? Was money something that was always a scarcity perspective of like, oh no, we can't do those things. We don't have enough money. Or was money something where, you are able to, have agency with it? It's something that it's not scary. It's just part of our ecosystem and we make our money work for us, right? So our money story is so predictive of how people are going to experience their relationship with money as they get older. And so again, just being really mindful of what is that money story. And the piece is this isn't about shame or blame or pointing back at our family systems of origin and saying like, oh, you gave me a broken narrative. It's understanding, again, to use your words, it's the context.
Mm.
That probably made a lot of sense if you had grandparents that were growing up in war eras. It makes a lot of sense if you had first generation Canadians or first generation someone where there was a sense of resourcefulness and under-resourced areas and whatnot. So the money story is that origin, I think, that helps us understand where can be infused into these conversations. And one really last quick little note on that, when we were doing research around kind of talking about money and money stories, what blew my mind is that people were more comfortable, Bruce, talking about religion, talking about sexual behavior
Oh, yeah.
and drug use,
Uh-huh.
their historical drug use. They
Uh-huh.
were more comfortable talking about
Oh,
religion,
yeah.
politics, drugs,
All
than
those things.
all those things, Bruce, than
Yeah.
talking to their own family about money.
Yeah. I want to come back to barriers to hope because you highlight two, and I'd love your definition of the first and your explanation where the second shows up. And they are toxic positivity, which I think I know what that means, but you're going to define it for me. And then second, burnout. How are those barriers to hope?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. So, toxic positivity is, again, we're out of alignment. And what I mean by that is we are projecting or saying it's all unicorns, sparkles, and butterflies. And
Right.
the reality is we are essentially like being dishonest with ourselves. And we're being dishonest with how we are representing ourselves in community. So, toxic positivity is very detrimental to the human condition, but also to our collective because we know intuitively that it doesn't feel right. And when we're out of alignment internally, we know externally we're going to see the ripple effect. So, toxic positivity, and it's again, I appreciate in our culture, there's kind of a time and place where, we might not, have certain conversations in certain places and spaces, but we don't want to be out of alignment in terms of what we're saying when we know it's not true. So that's that toxic positivity piece. The other piece about burnout is when we know the body is deeply depleted, the aperture, as I said earlier, in which we see the world is going to start to close down.
Yeah.
We're going to start to feel that, again, that scarcity. We're going to feel that isolation. We feel that disconnection. And all of those things about us retracting and pulling back decreases the spaciousness that's required for hope to grow and for hope to really
Mm.
take hold in a person's life.
We've really been focused on the person, the individual. But one of the other things you write about is the huge benefit of giving hope to others, and that benefits the giver. I mean, it's better to, what is it, to give a gift than to receive. That really resonated for me. Talk about that in the context of hope.
Yes. So we think about hope as a renewable resource. It's not something that you have and if you give it away then you're going to be without. When we share hope it actually like increases the benefit for everybody. And the idea about giving hope, it doesn't have to be that we're finding these heroic moments where we are the hero or the savior or the person who fixes everything for someone. We're talking about just noticing the little things and sharing it. So, as a collective, I can give you an example. Recently, I
Mm.
was on a flight coming from Vancouver back to Toronto, later night flight, and there was a gentleman who boarded the plane, Bruce, and he looked so dapper. He was wearing this three-piece suit, like he looked so handsome,
Yeah.
and he was a much older gentleman. And then he was sitting in the aisle, and I was on the other aisle, and he sat down beside a mature woman. And I love that she asked him right away, like what his deal was. She's like, look, and so here's this old bird shooting her shot, right? As far as I'm concerned, she's shooting
Yes.
her shot. I'm like, yes, sister, you go for this thing. Loving how this is unfolding. Anyway, so when she finally says, what are you doing? He shared that he was on his way to Toronto to meet up with his daughter because he was going to meet his granddaughter for the very first time and he wanted to dress for the occasion.
Oh,
Bruce, I'm
just
bawling. Like, I mean, the ugly cry. I am
yes.
bawling. And as
Yes.
soon as I landed, I shared that story with my family. I shared it with other people. So it's just this amazing contagion effect that when we see hope and we choose it and then we share it, it just changes the energy. And that's not woo-woo. It is literally science.
Yeah. Yeah.
Energetically, it changes how we show up for each other.
Just before we go. So I was raised by a heart, my mom, and a mind, my dad. So I had
Yeah.
those two things
Yeah.
always in me since I was born. The practice of affirmations for a lot of people would live very firmly in the category of heart. And yet I've been doing them for years because someone said there's data on this. What's
There.
your take? Do they work?
Yeah. So inspirational quotes work on like inspirational quotes, I think, are just this like surface level.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about and I think you're talking about, Bruce, is the research on like deep affirmations.
Oh,
Like I
like
am
writing them
some,
down. I write
yes,
them down.
100%. And I love, like, if you look at like Olympic world class athletes before they're about to do the thing. I know recently I remember watching Ronaldo, and he was like getting ready to do a penalty kick, and he's like, I will score this because this is what Ronaldo does. Ronaldo scores the ball. Ronaldo can handle the pressure. And like he was like in this mantra, you can like check it out on YouTube. Like
Yeah.
I just love that we know that these actually changes our brain. And the thing is, our brain will believe essentially what's repeated. A belief is just a practice thought. So the
Right.
more that we're able to practice it in the positive for us in terms of adding value, adding courage, adding clarity, that's going to give us an amazing return. And when our brain is looking after those areas, those deep trenches are forming in terms of what we know to be true about ourselves. The amazing thing about the brain is it starts to let go of some of those older beliefs.
Hmm.
And it starts to not nurture those trenches in the same way. So we actually can change our neurology. We can literally change our brain by how we talk to ourselves. But the key is that we have to internalize it. It has to be true.
Hmm.
It has to be something that we know that we're not fooling ourselves because we know when we're lying to ourselves.
So you're
So
saying I should delete the one that says I am 6'4". Okay.
yes, the one
I
that
will
says I am
delete
six
that
foot.
one.
Yeah,
That is not true.
absolutely.
Just
Yes.
before we go here, you assert that humor plays a key role in resilience, and I think we could make the case in hope as well. I am so relieved because I dine out on a
Yes.
good laugh.
Yes.
What do you mean? And did you write this just so it would help validate the focus that I have when it comes to talking to people about? Was that just for me?
It feels very personal, right? It feels
Does.
very
It's like,
personal. No.
yes.
Yeah. So one of the coolest things I remember very early on, almost 20 years ago now, into this area of research was like, damn, resilient people were funny. Like, I mean, like knee slapping funny,
Right.
also HR violation funny. Like it's a dark
Right.
humor. It is not for the faint of heart. And at first we didn't really understand where it fit, but thankfully, physiology helps us understand. So for example, when you laugh, your body releases a natural tranquilizer.
Right.
So for that moment in time, your pain receptors actually are blocked, which means it's not that it solves your problem, but you get a moment of reprieve. And in
Yeah.
that moment of reprieve, we're able to really show up, make wise choices. And that way we're able to carry the hard parts a little bit with maybe a little bit lighter.
Beautiful. Congrats on the book. And
Thank
thank you
you.
for joining us to talk about it.
It was my pleasure.
Robyne Hanley-Dafoe is the author of I Hope So: How to Choose Hope Even When It's Hard. And boy, in today's day and age, when it comes to your personal finances, things really are hard for people. And this is a huge prompt for us to focus on hope and maybe have a little laugh about it once in a while, too.